What's up, guys? We're going to be talking about youth resistance training. The reason why I wanted to do this talk is because nobody really knows what's going on. Everybody has general ideas about should we use strength and conditioning with youth athletes, when, how old, how much volume, how much intensity, should they use weights? Is there a difference between body weight training and weights, or should we just be doing coordination and like running stuff? Like, what should we be doing? Is there injury involved? Does this like hurt the youth athletes? Will this like stunt their growth? Does this put them at a higher risk for injury? Like, what's the situation? Because young kids, weights, that could be a poor combination situation. So that's what we're trying to clarify here. In the 90s, when I was a kid, like we went outside and played. We climbed trees, we lifted things, we built forts. We were constantly moving. We were constantly doing something new, playing, whatever. We were constantly moving weight. We were moving our body weight by climbing, by pushing each other, by wrestling each other. We were also multi-sport athletes, and that's not super commonly seen that kids have the time or the desire to go outside and play for multiple hours a day. To have structured physical activity with the oversight of a coach can be super beneficial to kids. And that's basically what this article is saying in a much more beautiful, fluid, eloquent, scientific way than what I am giving you. This time it's called the Position Statement on Youth Resistance Training, a 2014 International Consensus. And this is by Dr. Feigenbaum. He's really the king and a big name in youth resistance training. And they put out a consensus paper, basically the current standing of the research and the belief and practice of youth resistance training every 3 to 4 years. So this one is from 2014. I haven't found one that's newer than that. So this is our current standing. Youth strength and conditioning is a broad term because we have children and we have adolescents. And when we talk about youth strength and conditioning, we're basically differentiating between people who are not adults and people who are adults. So it's important when we're talking about youth athletes, young athletes, whatever, to know that we're talking about both child athletes and adolescent athletes within that mix, unless we differentiate the two, unless it's otherwise stated. Support for the use of resistance training in youth, provided that these programs are supervised by qualified professionals. Keep that in mind, that's really important. And consistent with the needs, goals, and abilities of the children and adolescents. Performance improvements in muscular strength, power production, running velocity, change of direction, speed, and general motor performance in youth. So if you have a youth athlete, then there's a lot of benefits for them, but also from a health perspective. But it can also make positive alterations in overall body composition, reduce body fat, and improve insulin sensitivity in adolescents who are overweight, and enhance cardiac function in children who are obese. Childhood obesity and having children who are overweight is definitely a problem in America. It has performance benefits clear in the research, and also health benefits clear in the research. So whether you're you've got a youth athlete or you just have a youth who you want to get healthy, keep healthy, stay active, it has benefits for both sides. Back to the article. Progressive resistance training under the supervision of qualified professionals, again, can offer a safe, effective, and worthwhile method for reversing this undesirable trend while encouraging participation in resistance training as an ongoing lifestyle choice. The importance of effective education by qualified professionals is essential, and positive early experiences in physical education have been associated with lifelong physical activity. As children reach the onset of puberty, they experience rapid growth along with observable non-linear gains in muscular strength. There's fluctuation. It's not linear. It doesn't always look like this. Research has indicated that muscle growth will largely explain the disparity between sexes, especially for absolute means of muscular strength and power. And we will talk about this later again, so hold that thought. You can't treat any 10-year-old like a 10-year-old. There might be a 10-year-old who has played outside a lot, has done a lot of body weight training, has a parent who's a coach, for example, and they have a training age of 2 to 3 years old. And now training age is the number of years that they've been training. So this athlete has trained since they were 7. Maybe their dad lifts weights and they've lifted weights with their dad or something like that. So they have a training age of 3 years old, although they're 10 years old. That means their biological age is 10, their training age is 3, but their physical maturity might be higher. So they might have a chronological age, basically their maturity age, of 12. Whereas an athlete who has never resistance trained in their life, has been sedentary their whole life, and literally just started training at 10 years old, might have a physical maturation of 9 and a 0 training age, and is 10 years old. Owing to the individualized nature of growth and maturation, children and adolescents of the same chronological age will vary markedly in biological status up to 4 to 5 years, and consequently, chronological age is deemed a weak indicator of maturational status. From a developmental perspective, this becomes critically important when training an adolescent who is approaching adulthood but has no experience participating in structured resistance training programs. Conversely, a technically proficient 10-year-old child should not be restricted to introductory training methods, provided they have interest and desire to participate in advanced training. There's no real need to limit kids because safety isn't an issue as long as there's a qualified professional nearby, as long as there's a program, as long as, again, safety is a priority and we're taking into account what these kids can be loaded with, how we're training them exactly. Biological age, chronological age, and training age are three very important factors to consider. Fears that resistance training would injure the growth plates of youth athletes are not supported by scientific reports or clinical observations, which indicates that the mechanical stress placed on the developing growth plates from the resistance exercise or high strain eliciting sports such as gymnastics or weightlifting may be beneficial for bone formation and growth. While children have a lower risk of resistance training related injury than adults do, attention to initial postural alignment and technical competency during all exercises throughout the training program is essential to ensure safe and effective practice, irrespective of the kind of resistance training that we're doing. So again, having a qualified professional who can make sure that the area is safe, that things are being done correctly, posture, positioning, helping the children learn the technique. A lot of injuries that happen during strength training are accidents due to poor posture or form. A lot of the dangers of strength training, the perceived dangers, let's say, of resistance training can actually be taken away with working with a competent professional and not, in a group of 50 athletes with one coach. Furthermore, no scientific evidence indicates that resistance training will have an adverse effect on linear growth during childhood or adolescence or reduce eventual height in adulthood. Resistance training is not going to slow that down. Let's talk about injury prevention. Although the total elimination of sport-related injuries and physical activity-related injuries is an unrealistic goal, we call it injury reduction instead of injury prevention at this point. Multifaceted training programs that include general and specific strength and conditioning activities may help to reduce the likelihood of injuries in youth. They go through a bit of the research, if you guys want to read this, about some of which is adolescent athletes who incorporated resistance training in their physical development program suffered fewer injuries and recovered from injuries they did sustain with less time spent in rehab as compared to teammates who did not participate in resistance training. We're looking at a reduction of injuries, and then the ones that we do have, faster rehab time. Sounds like a benefit to me. With kids getting outside less, with kids playing less sport, with early specialization and things like that, we need, again, to have something that bridges the gap in order to prepare bodies better than they're being prepared right now. Resistance training can help to fill this deficit, fill this gap. Considerations for young females. Well-supervised, multifaceted resistance training programs have been shown to reduce abnormal biomechanics that manifest during adolescence and appear to decrease injury rates in female athletes. So what's especially interesting is that resistance training timed with growth and development may induce the desired neuromuscular spurt, which may improve sports performance and improve biomechanics related to injury risk in young athletes. Let's skip to talking about actually implementing the program. The selection of the resistance modality will largely depend on all of your resources. Do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have the equipment, etc.? However, when basic body weight exercise techniques such as squatting, lunging, pressing, and pulling movements is sufficiently developed in the individual, exercises with free weights should be incorporated into the training program, since alternative forms of resistance such as machine-based resistance have been reported to stimulate less muscle activation. Go ahead and get into those weights. Go ahead and give them the dumbbell. Go ahead and give them the kettlebell. Get creative. It's not talking about we have to do clean and jerks. We don't have to deadlift with a hex bar. Obviously, it has to be age appropriate. Give them the weights though. Qualified professionals should employ a range of exercises which are designed to promote the development of muscular strength and enhance overall fundamental motor skill competency. Childhood is deemed to be a crucial time in which development of motor skill competency can take place. Children can be introduced to more advanced exercise that challenge the child in terms of coordination and require greater levels and greater rates of force production. What to program and plan. So we said we can use free weights, right? It's fine to load the athlete as appropriate, keep the exercise selection simple, and then gradually become more advanced. Exposing a child or adolescent to excessive intensity or external loading, so having too much weight on the bar at the expense of correct technique may lead to an acute injury, so no bueno. While prescribing excessive volume over a training block may induce a state of overtraining. So we don't want to overtrain, we don't want to overpush by giving too much volume, we also don't want to load too much weight and sacrifice our form, right? So for kids, it's really important to keep the coordination, keep the technique on point. Again, we're just laying a basis. The child or adolescent must be able to demonstrate sound technical competency irrespective of the load. For individuals without prior experience of resistance training, initial prescription should use low volume, 1 to 2 sets, and low to moderate training intensities, about 60% of their 1 rep max, right? We're not pushing the weights. When children are initially exposed to multi-joint resistance training exercises like squatting, Multiple repetitions might be counterproductive. It's recommended that they actually perform repetitions with real-time feedback. So like give them feedback on their form. Again, having a qualified professional here will help. Prescription should be based on training age, motor skill competency, like how they move, coordination, technical proficiency, existing levels of strength. A lot of the injuries that happen are because qualified professionals aren't involved, and that can lead to acute injury due to the conditions not being safe, too much volume, too high of intensity, etc. So kids have been doing this stuff forever. Let them move, let them train with weights. Super beneficial. Can't recommend it enough. If you have any questions, hit me in the comments and I will be sure to respond or get you to somebody who can.